Hi, and welcome back if you've been with me before. If not, if this is your first video of mine, you're very welcome. Hope you find this useful. Basically, I'm just looking to simplify and explain some aspects of React I've come across. I normally make videos about the stuff that I found a bit tricky when I first came across it. So today we're going to have a look at quite an advanced React pattern, compound components, which you may or may not have come across before. Really useful way of creating reusable, customizable components and with surprisingly little code. But it can be a little bit tricky just until you understand the concept. So what exactly are compound components? Well, basically, they're a set of components that belong to a parent component, which then all go together, sometimes optionally, to form a sort of super component, if you like, sort of one big component made of much smaller components. You might think that just sounds generally like what React does, which it is. But as you'll see, there's something a little bit sort of special about them, just in the way that those components really do belong to that parent. These are not components that you can just use all over the place. These are components which are basically part of something bigger, but are also optional. Today we're going to look at a simple but effective accordion component. It's just going to be like a FAQs section, a frequently asked questions section. And now I found this example that we're using today in an article that I was reading. I had a few typos in which kind of broke it, but I had a bit of trouble kind of implementing it. I'm going to put a link in the comments to the article because I think it's quite interesting. And obviously I've used some of their code today, so I want to just, give them the props for that, if I can make a pretty silly joke there, sorry. Anyway, back to compound components. Why use them? So this is basically about the separation of concerns. You're writing smaller components, it's easier to code them, it's easier to read them. And as I say, they've got the sort of modular style, which means you can use parts of it that you want. Maybe you have got a component and sometimes you want to use the subheading and sometimes you don't. Well, it's very easy just to miss it out with a compound component. The advantage then, and it's also potentially a drawback depending on what you want to do, is that these components are scoped. That is to say, you have components that are only going to work within their parent component or inside their parent scope. And we're going to achieve that using the context API. I'll say a bit more about that later. But that, yeah, as I say, it's both a positive and a negative, depending really on what it is that you want to achieve. But I certainly think compound components are pretty neat and they're worth a look. So let's get started. As always, down in the comments, I have put a link to a GitHub repo. And you're really welcome to like, to comment, to subscribe, to give me feedback. Always good to have interaction. So just to set things up and so we don't spend hours messing around sort of bootstrapping stuff, I've used the standard create React app. So that's just set up the whole React project in VS Code. And as you can see, if I flip over to Edge, I've got the usual React sort of setup page there. And yeah, I tend to use Edge when I'm developing. I don't really know why, because I've also got Chrome and Firefox, but I guess just because Edge is the default browser and I'm kind of lazy, Edge just pops up. Anyway, there we are. It's running in Edge, the standard new React page. Now, I've also created a couple of files and folders. If we just come over here, this one, so this components folder is just going to store two files. We've got accordion.js, where we're going to actually build our compound component, and I've got accordion.styles.js. Now, we're using styled components for this, and I've already got here the styled components set up because this is just CSS in style components. That's not really what this video is about, so I've just basically got that ready. If you don't use styled components, basically what's happening here is Each bit of CSS is inside its own, well, in this case, it's mostly divs. It could also be an H1 property. We've got the CSS written there, and then we're going to export those chunks of CSS, and we're actually going to use them in our components. Plenty of info out there on style components if you haven't come across them before. So you don't really need style components, for compound components. It's just that it's going to make it look a little bit nicer. So that's all set up and ready to go. What else have we got here? Our data file, yes. Down here, I've just got data.json, and in here we've got some JSON, and it is just 5 little bits of data which we're going to use for our FAQs section. Okay, so we'll use that a little bit later. So let's get into the accordion component then. So we're starting from scratch here. What do we need to do? First thing is to get in our React hooks. So I'm going to bring in use state, because we will have some state to use. Use context. As I say, we're sharing context through our we're sharing state through our compound component using the use context API. You can do it with props. If we're just thinking a little bit more about basically giving you flexibility, then the use context API is, I think, superior to props, but it is going to depend a little bit on what exactly you're doing. And so I'm going to bring in use context and create context, because we're doing that all in one place. So that, of course, is coming in from React. And we're also going to import here the components which I made already in this accordion.styles.js. So these styled components. So as I say, you don't actually need to have them styled, but we're just doing it to make it look a little bit nicer. So what have we got here? We've got a container, and we've got an inner, we've got an item, we've got a body, frame, not fram, title, and a header. And if we just, actually, let's just grab those from, so that was called accordion.styles.js. So if we just take, for example, the container, if we come over to Accordion, here we are, container, it's just a div, it's got display flex on it, and it's got a border on the bottom. That's all we need to know, really. So we've imported all of those components, and yeah, we will use them shortly. Now we need to set up some context. So Accordion components, obviously you click on part of it and it opens up the body relevant to that part. So typically you might click on the on a FAQ question and it reveals the answer. So what this context is going to do, I'm just going to call it toggle context, and we'll set that, of course, equal to create context. So what this context is going to do is basically share whether a given part of our component is open or closed. So we've got the context set up there. Now we need to just create the main accordion function. So we're going to export that. It's the default export from this page. We're not actually exporting anything else. So we can export default the function accordion, and that function, now if it's going to be a compound component, we're going to take in a couple of things here. We're going to take in the children, and we're going to take in the rest of the props, and of course we just need to spread those like that. So now it's a standard React component here. So we are going to return something. And what we want to return then is our container. And inside our container, we want to have an inner. Now we've brought in the rest props and the children. So the rest props, we're just going to pass down to the container. And the children, we are going to put right in the middle, in the inner. Okay, so far, pretty much normal. Let's move on then to thinking about the different parts that make up this compound component. So if we take accordion next, so we've got this function accordion. Everything else, because it's going to work specifically within the scope of accordion inside accordion, we're actually going to start with accordion dot point period, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to take in one of our components. So we've already used actually container and inner, so we won't be using them. But the first one, makes sense, will be the title. So accordion.title is going to be its own function. And we might as well just put them, sort of camel case them together to give it a name. So accordion.title is going to be a function accordion title. And inside there, you're going to get pretty used to doing this. We take in the children and we take in the rest of the props. And then we open up the body of the function. And what are we going to return? We will return a title. And in fact, sorry, this all going on one line. We don't really need to open up the return with the brackets. Let's just return the title component. And of course, in the middle, you've got the children. And we've got the rest of the props like that. So we've set up our first little part of the compound. We've got our title. And if we just flick over to the CSS, the title, we see it's a styled H1 component. So we've just got our regular sort of semantic HTML elements here. It's an H1, we've got font size, line height, etc. No big deal. Right, with that said and done, what else do we need? We've got a frame that goes around the edge of the accordion. So we can take that next. That is going to equal a function. And you'll see basically the same thing happens here. We've got accordion frame, camel cased. We might as well just cut and paste that to save time because it's going to be exactly the same. And then in the body of our function, we can basically copy and paste that and just make sure that we're changing title to frame. That's all we need. So the next one is slightly more complicated. Well, it's a bit of a bigger function. It's a more important one. So this is the actual item that we're making. I am actually just going to copy and paste that just to save a little bit of time. So it is the item and we are going to call it accordion item. No need to break the habit of a lifetime. So it takes in the children, it takes in the rest of the props. Now it does have a return. Let's just open that one out a bit. So it's going to return, well, the item, of course, because that's the same as the others. And with the rest props and with the children. So far, so normal. But this is where we need to think about context. So we've already created our context up here. Let's actually implement some context in terms of the context provider. So here I'm just going to set up the toggle context provider, and that is going to actually go in the middle of the provider, of course, because that's how the provider works. You need to wrap whatever you want in the provider. We'll probably get some errors in a second because we haven't done our return statement. Oh, it's in the wrong place. There we are. Let's just get rid of that for a second. So yeah, we've got our context provider, and it's wrapped around our component, or this part of our component, which is where the context is going to be needed. We're being quite specific here. So our context provider needs a value, and that value is going to be a couple of pieces of state, which we will come to in just a second. So let's just, maybe we're just going to leave that actually empty for a while until we've set up the state. And that basically does it for that component. All we just need to do is make sure that we return everything. Let's just format that a little bit better. Okay, so we just need to remember to put some values in our context provider. Right. The next one is also an important one. So this is going to be the header component. I might just save a little bit of time by copying and pasting this one. So it's going to be the header, and inside the header, which we best call accordion header, we are of course returning the header and the rest props and the children as per before. This one of course does not need to be wrapped in the use context provider, so we can get rid of that. However, this component is where we need to have some access to that context. So if we just come above the return statement up here, and let's just get some access to that context. So in here, we're gonna take some use context like that, and the context we want to use is of course the toggle context. Great. So let's just think a little bit now about how we're going to use that context. What actually is the state that we're going to be creating and updating? What I think we need to do is come back. Let's come back right to this component here, to the item. So as you're going to see shortly, this item is going to kind of, well, it's obviously it's sort of the body of the thing. So we're going to put some state here. So I'm just going to say const, and should we call it toggle show, and set toggle show. I don't know if those are good names or not. And we're just going to set that to use state, and we're going to say for now it is true. Okay, so now we have got some state which we can put into our context provider. So in this case, we're actually going to provide both of those, toggle show and set toggle show. So I'm just going to copy those and put them in. Oh, what did I do? Let's just get rid of these question marks. There we are. So we've got, oh, it should be toggle, not taggle. Let's get that right from the start. Toggle show and set toggle show. So we've got our state, we've got our context in the provider here, wrapping it around the items. Right, let's return to the header. So in the header, we're going to take that context and we're going to use it. So we're actually going to need both of those. Again, let's just cut and paste them without the spelling mistakes. So we have got const toggle show and set toggle show equal to the use context toggle context. That is perfect. Now we're returning a header here, and we've got, let's just open this one up a little bit because we're going to make it a bit bigger. So we have got the rest props, oh, not quite right, and the children. And here we want to be able to change the state. So we're going to have an onClick method as well in this function, or in this component, should I say. So onClick, we're just going to set up an arrow function in here, and we're going to use the set toggle show. And basically, we're just going to send it back to where it was. Okay, so sorry, to the opposite of where it was. So it's a Boolean. We've set it up with true. If it's true, we want to set it false. If it's false, we want to set it true. So all we need to do, put the exclamation mark right there at the beginning and just say, give me the opposite of what you've got. If it's false, give me true. If it's true, give me false. And that is all we need to do in that one with that state. I just space that out a little bit, make it look a bit better. Okay. And so that's the header. I think the last part we actually need is the body of the accordion. So we might just get away with a bit of cutting and pasting here. Probably end up making typos with all this cutting and pasting, but let's see. So we've got so we've got header there, header there, header, header. Let's see if we can do this all in one go. So now we've got the accordion body, we've got accordion body function, children and rest props. We actually, in this one, we need to consume the context, but we don't actually need to set anything. So I'm going to get rid of the second one, which is obviously the function which updates that state. So we're just going to consume using toggle show. And what do we want to do in here? I think here, yeah, we're going to set up a conditionally rendered CSS class. So I'm just getting rid of the function that we were using in the header component. So we need class name is equal to, and then what is it equal to? Well, it depends on what this context gives us. So let's just take in toggle show, and if that is true, we are going to use a CSS class of open, and if it's not true, we're going to use the CSS class of closed. Now, if we pop over to accordion.styles and we come down to, where are we? In the body. So what we've got here are closed and open. So basically the difference is that this one has a max height of 0 pixels. I think these are slightly confusingly named. I'm actually, as I say, I'm working off code that's from the article that I've linked to. And I think basically this is like the one that you click to open it or the one you click to close it, which is why, yeah, you may feel free to change the names. I think that's slightly confusing way to put it because it's basically as if it's the wrong way around, but it does have a kind of, it makes a kind of sense, kind of. Anyway, and then down here, let's just stick the children in a span. Sorry, close that one. So it's not going to auto close. Okay, no problem. So that is the body component sorted. Let's just give that a save. And we are, I think, yeah, we're running in the console, but at the moment we're still seeing the same sort of basic create React app stuff because we haven't actually done anything with app.js yet, and we're going to do that next. Let's just quickly save these accordion styles, make sure they're all okay. Right. So let's put it all together, and this is probably where we'll run into loads of problems. But anyway, so this is the default create React app.js component. We're basically going to get rid of loads of it. So we don't need the logo or the app.js. Instead, I'm going to import Accordion from, it is in components / Accordion. Good stuff. And that data, remember the JSON data we talked about earlier. So I'm going to import, and we'll call it the fact data from data.json. That's right. So we've got that one down there. Great. Now we can get rid of the entire return statement, basically. Probably easier just to start from scratch. So let's return. And what are we going to return? So first things first, our accordion. And then inside the accordion, we're going to have a title. So let's call that accordion.title. In fact, we're not calling it accordion.title. That is what we've given it up here, isn't it? Accordion.title, yeah. Oh, and look, I've managed to copy and paste loads of errors. I'm going to quickly correct those, else it's going to annoy us later. Looks okay. Right, so we've got accordion title. Let's just close that. And then in the middle, that takes in the children. And the children in this case is going to be frequently asked questions. Okay. Now, underneath that, we're going to take in the accordion frame. And inside that accordion frame is where we're sort of building everything else. So how are we going to deal with this JSON data? Well, the classic React way is just to map through it, right? So we can take that data and we can call the map method on it. So basically we need an arrow function as the callback. It is going to return basically everything else, which is the item, the header, and the body. So let's get started with accordion.item. Now, when we do array map, we are going to get an error message if we don't give it the key it demands. And we have got a key built into the JSON data. So I'm just going to call it item.key. Oh, and that reminds me, we need to take in, just to specify what our item is going to be. Oh, and that could be confusing because look, that needs a capital letter. The thing that we've called item, otherwise it's going to confuse us, and more importantly it's going to confuse the compiler. So yeah, we're taking in our each thing that we're mapping over is the item, and our accordion.item key has item.key. And then inside here, let's go for accordion.header. And in fact, I might just keep that on one line, because in there we're going to have item.header. No problem. And then equally tabbed in, we can have the accordion body, and obviously the children there will be item.body. So in that data, in each case, we've got an ID, which we're using as a key, we've got a header, and we've got a body. Easy stuff. Let's try saving that and see if we get some errors. We do get some errors because of my silly mistake with the rest props. What's that? Line 26 must be over here. It might just be that I haven't saved that one. Unexpected use of comma. Is that actually a fail or not? Let's just see. Compiled with warnings. Expects a return value from arrow function. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we probably, let's give it what it wants. And unexpected use of comma operator, line 36 in Accordion.js. Is there? Unexpected use of comma, line 36. So we've got toggle context provider, toggle show. That surely needs a comma, doesn't it? Of course it does. What's the problem with that? So in the accordion item, I think, I don't know if this would break it or not. Probably, no, it looks like it's sort of, no, it is broken. Yeah, it's broken. Yeah, and I see what we've done actually, or what I've done. We need to, in that value, because we're not just passing a single value, so we're actually destructuring it. So it needs to be in the double curly braces. I don't, let's see what's happened. All right, now let's have a look. Okay, something's not working. Set toggle show is not a function. Well, I beg to differ. I think it is a function, but where are we? Line 47. Toggle show. Okay, so it's working. How much does it cost? We can just click on one of those, and in each case, it opens up our FAQ components. Quite neat. Probably need to work a little bit on the style so that it doesn't... Oh, I think it's only jumping around the page actually because the... Oh, it's getting... yeah, only when you have the bar, the scroll bar appearing and disappearing. But works, and I think that's quite nice. Quite happy with that. So that's basically it. Works quite nicely. Not quite sure what that error was at the end. A bit of a mystery, but never mind. I think I know what happened. I think my browser is doing something a little bit strange with caching when I'm working in VS Code locally, and I wish it wouldn't do that because sometimes you have to do several refreshes before something will work. I think that's probably what was causing the problem. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, thanks for commenting, and I will be back very, very soon.